The billionaire was just steps away from his car when three dark figures rushed at him from the shadows. One shoved him hard against the side of the vehicle, another grabbed for his briefcase, and the third blocked the escape route behind him. "You're not going anywhere," one hissed, his voice cold and threatening. The billionaire struggled, panic in his eyes, but before he could cry for help, a sharp young voice rang out. "Rocky, save him!" From the corner, a large dog burst forward. Rocky charged with incredible speed, barking fiercely, his body lowering like a shield. He didn't bite, didn't scratch. He simply pushed his weight between the attackers and the billionaire, forcing them back with intimidating growls and powerful leaps. The first man raised his hand as if to strike, but Rocky lunged forward with a deep growl, forcing him to stumble backward. The second tried to circle around, yet Rocky pivoted fast, blocking every move, his snarling face leaving no room for courage. The third man hesitated, startled by the sudden ferocity of the animal that clearly wasn't afraid. The little girl stood a few steps away, her eyes wide with fear, but her voice steady. "Don't let them touch him, Rocky. Keep them away." The alley echoed with the sound of barking, shoes scraping against the ground, and the frustrated curses of the attackers. The billionaire, still pressed against his car, could hardly believe what he was seeing. A child and her dog were standing against three grown men, and somehow the men were the ones losing ground. Every time an attacker dared to step closer, Rocky leapt forward, forcing them back, making them flinch. He created a circle of safety around the billionaire without drawing blood. His power was not in violence, but in sheer courage, strength, and loyalty. By the end of the standoff, the three attackers realized this was no easy target. Their victim wasn't alone. He had a guardian, not of steel or guns, but of loyalty and fearless devotion. And that guardian had answered the command of a little girl. The men didn't give up. Instead, frustration twisted into rage. One pulled a heavy metal chain from his pocket, the links clinking menacingly in the dim light. The billionaire froze, his heartbeat hammering. But Rocky immediately stepped in front of him, chest low, teeth bared, a growl rumbling deep from his throat. "Get out of the way, mutt," the man shouted, swinging the chain. But the dog didn't move. He darted forward, snapping at the air, forcing the attacker to step back before the strike could land. The little girl shouted again, her voice trembling but firm, "Rocky, don't let them near him." The dog's response was instant. He circled the men quickly, darting from one to the other, breaking their formation. Every time a hand reached toward the billionaire, Rocky rammed his body between them, pushing them off balance. Still no bites, no claws, just raw determination to hold his ground. The attackers began shouting at each other in frustration. "He's just a dog," one yelled. But their confidence was cracking. Rocky's presence, his refusal to back down, was stronger than any weapon. The billionaire's eyes widened with awe. He had seen trained guards with guns falter under pressure, but here was a simple dog, obeying the desperate cries of a child, outsmarting three grown men without drawing blood. Then, faintly in the distance, a siren wailed. Blue and red flashes appeared at the far end of the street. "Police!" the girl cried. The men exchanged panicked looks. Their chance was slipping away. One spat on the ground. "We'll be back," he snarled, but even he sounded uncertain. Slowly, cautiously, the three began to retreat, stepping backward as Rocky advanced with more furious barks, driving them farther away. Only once they were out of reach did the dog stop, standing tall, his body tense, guarding the billionaire like a fortress. The alley was still trembling with echoes of the confrontation, but the billionaire's heart was calm for the first time. His eyes turned to the little girl, small, weary, clothed simple, but with courage far greater than her size. The flashing red and blue lights painted the alley walls as a patrol car skidded to a stop. Two officers leapt out, hands on their holsters, scanning the tense scene. "Step away, hands where we can see them," one shouted, pointing toward the three men still lingering at the far end of the alley. But the attackers were already running. The sound of boots pounded against pavement as they scattered into the night. The officers gave a quick chase, but in the maze of narrow streets, the men disappeared like shadows. Breathing hard, the billionaire leaned against his car, shaken but alive. Rocky stayed planted firmly in front of him, chest puffed out, still on guard, even as the danger slipped away. The little girl hurried forward, clutching her dog's collar. "It's okay now, Rocky," she whispered, her small hand trembling as she rubbed his neck. The dog finally relaxed, though his eyes stayed sharp. One of the officers approached cautiously, glancing at the unusual trio, the shaken billionaire, the poor-looking girl, and her loyal dog. "Sir, are you hurt?" he asked. The billionaire shook his head. No thanks to them. If it weren't for this child and her dog, I wouldn't be standing here." The officer raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. His gaze shifted to the girl, who avoided his eyes, still hugging Rocky tightly, as if afraid the world might snatch him away. "What exactly happened?" the second officer asked, notebook in hand. The billionaire straightened, his voice steadier now. "They ambushed me. 3 men, but this little one—" He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at her. "She ordered her dog to protect me, and he did. He saved my life." The officers exchanged glances, impressed. "We'll file a report and send out a search, but you should head somewhere safe tonight," one said. The billionaire nodded, but his eyes never left the girl. For a moment the world around him seemed to fade, the flashing lights, the voices of the police, until there was only her and the dog, who had stood unflinchingly against fear. He knelt slightly, lowering himself to her height. His expensive suit was torn and dirty, but his voice was warm. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl looked at him, uncertain, clutching her empty purse tighter. Her lips parted, but before she could answer, Rocky barked once, sharp and protective, as if reminding them both, "This fight isn't over yet." The alley grew quiet again after the police left, their sirens fading into the night. The billionaire remained standing near his car, brushing dust from his jacket, his gaze still fixed on the little girl and Rocky. She stood stiffly, shoulders hunched, as if bracing for trouble to return. Her small hands clutched the dog's collar like an anchor. Rocky, still alert, scanned the shadows with a low growl humming in his chest. The billionaire took a careful step forward. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said softly. Her eyes darted up to him wide and cautious. "People always say that," she whispered, "but it's never true." The words struck him harder than any punch the attackers could have thrown. For the first time that night, his polished world cracked, revealing the weight of her reality. He crouched slightly, making his tall frame less intimidating. "Listen," he said gently, "I've seen courage tonight, yours and your dog's. You saved me when you didn't have to. Now let me do something for you." The girl frowned, uncertain. "Like what?" He glanced at her torn shoes, the dirt on her dress, the way she held herself with quiet strength, but weary eyes. A safe place, food, warmth. "You shouldn't be out here, not like this." Rocky barked once, as if demanding clarification. The billionaire smiled faintly, lowering a hand toward the dog. "And of course, Rocky comes too. I wouldn't dare separate you two." The girl hesitated. Trust wasn't something she handed out easily, but the calmness in his tone, the way he looked directly into her eyes instead of past her, made something inside her waver. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why would you care about me?" The billionaire's throat tightened. He thought of his empty mansion, the silence that echoed through its halls. For years he had believed wealth could shield him from loneliness. But standing here, face to face with a child who had risked everything to help him, he realized how wrong he had been. "Because tonight you reminded me that people are worth more than money," he said quietly. "And I don't want to forget that again." For a moment silence hung between them. Then Rocky nudged her leg gently, almost urging her to say yes. The girl took a slow breath, and for the first time that night, her shoulders loosened. "Okay," she whispered. The billionaire offered his hand, not as a businessman, not as a victim, but as a man grateful to be alive. And in that fragile exchange, something new began. The billionaire's mansion stood tall and glowing against the night sky, its windows pouring warm light into the cold darkness. As the car pulled up, the little girl pressed her face against the glass, eyes widening at the sight. Rocky barked softly, sensing her wonder. She whispered to him, "It's like a castle." The billionaire overheard but said nothing, simply smiling as the driver opened the door. He stepped out first, then turned to help the girl. For a moment she hesitated, clutching Rocky's collar tighter, but the gentle nod from the man coaxed her forward. Inside, the vast marble foyer seemed to swallow her small figure. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and polished floors reflected their light. But what struck her most wasn't the wealth. It was the warmth. The air was filled with the scent of food, something she hadn't smelled in days. "Hungry?" the billionaire asked. Her nod was small, but her eyes betrayed how desperately she wanted to say yes. Within minutes, she was seated at a long table, Rocky curled at her feet. A plate of steaming food was set in front of her. At first, she only stared, afraid it might be taken away. "Go on," he encouraged softly. "It's yours." She took a cautious bite. Then another. Soon tears welled in her eyes as she ate, not from hunger anymore, but from the feeling of being safe. The billionaire sat across from her, watching quietly. In her, he saw resilience, something even money couldn't buy. He realized she had given him more than he could ever repay. A reminder that life was about connection, not wealth. When she finally leaned back, full and tired, he spoke again. "I don't want you to live on the streets anymore. You and Rocky deserve better." Her gaze sharpened, suspicion flickering. "You mean, live here?" "If you'd like," he said. "This house has too many empty rooms. Maybe it's time they're filled with laughter instead of silence." Rocky thumped his tail against the floor, as if answering for her. The girl's lips curved into the faintest smile, cautious but real. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt something stir in his chest. Hope. That night, as Rocky curled at her side and the girl drifted into peaceful sleep under a roof she could trust, the billionaire stood by the door, whispering to himself, "They saved me more than I saved them." If this moment inspired you, show some love with a like and subscribe to be part of the next story.